Grand larceny is a serious felony that seldom gets punished in Major League Baseball, especially when it comes to trades. Teams get robbed blind all the time after all, so much so in fact that we could probably start an entire channel devoted to the bonehead moves that teams have made ever since Ty Cobb was slicing knees open with high slides a million years ago. For example, we could delve into arguably the dumbest move of all time, the trade of Babe Ruth from the Red Sox to the Yankees. The Boston owner, Harry Frizzy, needed money, and so he sold the rights to the Babe, who had just broken the single-season home run record with 29 bombs, for just $100,000. Ruth would go on to post the highest WAR in history at 182.6, while Frizzy got to stage My Lady Friends on Broadway in a less than successful run. The Red Sox would spend the next 8 decades in baseball purgatory following. Or, how about trading a future Hall of Famer in Pedro Martinez, who at 25 was coming off a season where he struck out 305 batters with an ERA of 1.90 for basically nothing. The Expos didn't want to extend Pedro on a big deal with his free agency looming, so they just moved him to the Red Sox for pitchers Tony Armas and Carl Pavano. This trade seemed to end the curse of the Bambino for the Red Sox, as Pedro helped Boston win the World Series in 2004, along the way putting up the most dominant stretch by any starting pitcher in baseball history. But suffice it to say, it didn't do much for the Expos. There's also the big unit, another blunder by the former Montreal team. To be fair, Randy Johnson had struggled to get control of his filthy stuff, and in 1989 went just 0-4 with an ERA of 6.67, when he was moved to the Mariners for Mark Langston, who led the AL in Ks 3 times at that point. Langston would pitch in just 24 games for the Expos, while Johnson went on to win 303 games and fan 4,875 batters, second most all time. No sport is littered with more trade steals than baseball. The NFL can't trade 17-year-olds since they're in high school. They can't even trade 20-year-olds since they're in college. And there's no league where more 26-year-olds randomly break out to successful 5 to 10-year runs than the MLB. As such, teams are forced into making these decisions on underdeveloped players all the time. The NBA surely has had its share of steals, but they aren't nearly as common due to the balance of any one player's value being completely different from baseball. The same is also true for the NHL and most other major sports leagues. The examples we mentioned before are just 3 of thousands we could probably dig up. But for today, we're going to be focusing on the most recent batch, the ones that still reverberate throughout rosters as we speak, beginning with multiple Dodger deals that would go on to gift 2 franchises potential future faces of their teams in exchange for less than 150 innings of solid relief help. But before we get more into the worst trade deals of the modern MLB era, let me tell you about today's sponsor who facilitates some of the best deals in ticketing, Game Time. Now, I've managed to get out to a number of Major League Baseball games this year, and I have to say, I've purchased every single ticket through Game Time. Why? 3 principal reasons, really. 1, they're last-minute deals that allow you to save up to 60% off a ticket's posted price if you buy it last minute. 2, the fact you can actually see where you're going to be sitting, which allows you to see the real value of a ticket. And then 3, perhaps my personal favorite feature, they're all-in pricing. This essentially prevents you seeing what looks like a good deal, and then at the last second, a bunch of fees being levied on there, which completely change the whole complexion of what you might be able to book. Now listen, I could go on all day listing their features, but the truth is, the best thing that I can say in support of Game Time and using it is the fact that I myself only really buy tickets through there at this point. That's how much I enjoy using it. So, take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code MTC for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code MTC for $20 off your first purchase. Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, back to our video. The Dodgers signed 2 players out of Cuba who went by Y. Alvarez in June 2016. One got a huge bonus of $16 million, while the last player the team signed was for just $2 million. These 2 signings were part of $46,374,500 the team spent, which caused a 100% overage tax to kick in, meaning the team actually spent more than $92 million. For the next 2 years, the Dodgers couldn't sign any international player for over $300,000. They were truly all in on these signees. In retrospect, Andrew Friedman was completely justified in spending that money in 2016 because in that talent pool was Yordan Alvarez and O'Neal Cruz. One is among the best clutch hitters in baseball, a monster at the plate, and the other could be a generational talent who hits and throws harder than nearly anyone in the game. So, who did the Dodgers get in return for these monsters in their eventual deals? Josh Fields and Tony Watson. Wait, you say, they gave Yordan Alvarez $16 million only to trade him for middling reliever Josh Fields? No. The other Y. Alvarez was Yadier, a pitcher who's never managed to appear in even a single MLB game. The tale of 2 Alvarezes shows just how much of a crapshoot scouting talent is. Andrew Friedman pioneered many of the data-driven processes that guide front offices today. He's engineered tremendous trades, yet he had Air Yordan and O'Neal Cruz in his farm system and let both of them get away in exchange for relief pitchers, while sinking $16 million into a washout. Yordan Alvarez defected from Cuba after the Pan Am Games, having played 2 seasons in La Serie Nacional for Las Tunas. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. He was turning 18 and stood 6'4" and weighed 190 pounds. Today, he stands 6'5" and weighs 237. When you turn back the clock, the early scouting report on Yordan was an athletic contact hitter who's shown some power in spurts. Another scout wrote, while Alvarez never showed much power in Cuba, he has since earned average to above average raw power grades from scouts who followed him at workouts. In fact, Yordan hit just 1 homer playing in the Cuban League. So, at the trade deadline in 2016, the Dodgers approached the Astros about Josh Fields, a mostly AAA pitcher who struggled in the bigs. But they were confused when Jeff Luhnow asked for why Alvarez in return. The team was like, no way, we just dropped $16 million on it. Luhnow countered, no, the other Y Alvarez. Yordan had never worn a Dodgers uniform at any level, but the Astros had scouted him and wanted to sign him themselves. They happily made the trade. Fields flourished for a time with the Dodgers, helping them get to the postseason in 2016 and the World Series in 2017, with his 1.55 ERA plus in tow. But in that World Series against the Astros, he got shelled in Game 2, giving up back-to-back homers to Altuve and Correa. By 2018, he was out of the MLB entirely. Meanwhile, Yordan would arrive in 2019 and has since then hit 145 homers while batting .295. His WOBA has remained at an elite level, he hits the ball as hard as anyone, and he somehow manages to strike out less than the MLB average. He even hit 6 homers in the postseason last year and was the ALCS MVP in 2021. With him in tow, the Astros have made it to 3 World Series since his debut, winning 1 of them. O'Neal Cruz, for his part, never made it to the top of the loaded Dodgers farm system, and in 2017, when they again wanted bullpen help, they decided to make a move for a veteran, sending Cruz and Angel Herman to Pittsburgh for lefty Tony Watson, a former All-Star who could give the team solid innings in the postseason. He would go on to throw 20 decent innings for LA in the regular season, then 6 scoreless innings in the 2017 championship and World Series rounds, but was gone the year after that. Cruz, meanwhile, remains a work in progress but could virtually explode at any moment, like when he became the first player ever to hit 3 balls over 115 miles per hour in one game, including 2 over 120 earlier this year. Even if he doesn't develop further, his 3.7 career B-WAR already dwarfs the 0.4 Watson put up in Hollywood. The 4th of July is usually considered a day of celebration, but at least for the near future, it'll be slightly diminished on the south side of Chicago because that's the anniversary of the trade that sent generational talent Fernando Tatis Jr. to the Padres for James Shields. Shields had signed with the Padres in 2015 for 4 years and $75 million, as part of A.J. Preller's wheeling and dealing to restock the roster, along with the additions of Will Myers, Matt Kemp, and B.J. Upton. This experiment resulted in a finish 14 games under 500, however, though with Shields continuing to be the workhorse he'd always been by throwing 202 innings with a 13-7 record and an ERA of 3.91. He started off 2016 in a bit of a slump, however, going 2-7 with an ERA of 4.28, while giving up a lot of homers along the way. The White Sox needed a solid third starter behind Chris Sale and Jose Quintana, and were willing to give up righty Eric Johnson and a skinny 17-year-old named Fernando Tatis Jr. The Padres would pay half the money Shields was owed as well, helping to offset the monetary cost in the Sox. Shields proceeded to go 4-12, 5-7, and 7-16 over the rest of his career for the White Sox, never again throwing up an ERA plus over 100 while surrendering 92 homers in those 3 campaigns, before calling it quits. Eric Johnson was supposed to take Shields' spot in the rotation, but went 0-4 before straining a flexor tendon and never making an extended return to the show. That leaves Fernando Tatis Jr., who at the time of the trade wasn't nearly as highly regarded as he became. He was still a decent prospect though, and when he broke in with a bang in 2019, crushing 22 homers in 84 games while finishing 3rd in Rookie of the Year, articles were already being written on how this had a chance to be a monumentally lopsided deal. Things would only get worse for Chicago from here, as during the 2020 season, Tatis Jr. joined the ranks of the elite, registering in the top 1% for average exit velo, top 3% for expected WOBA, and top 3% for fielding run value. He had one of the game's strongest arms, most powerful bats, and among the fastest legs. The Padres wanted to lock in their budding star, so they signed him to a 14-year, $330 million deal prior to the 2021 season. He then proceeded to go off. His 7.3 offensive WAR led all of baseball, and his 42 homers led the NL despite missing 32 games. His OPS plus of 166 was 4th best in the MLB as well. Sure, he had some fielding struggles, but with his athleticism and strong arm, few doubted his ability to flawlessly transition into an outfielder. Then, everything fell apart. For a time. He reported to spring training with a broken wrist. How did he break it? During a motorcycle accident. When asked about when the accident happened, he responded, "Which one?" While he was rehabbing his wrist, MLB slapped him with an 80-game suspension for taking clostebol, a banned PED. Tatis said the drug was a ringworm treatment, that he didn't knowingly take anything. He could have appealed to reduce his suspension, but chose not to, quite tellingly. It was a stupid mistake, intentional or not, and it stalled his development for a time. And it literally cost him a year of his development. 2023 saw his best season ever with the glove, with him registering a ridiculous 2.3 D-WAR on the year, while putting up fairly unimpressive numbers at the plate, registering his lowest OPS plus ever at just 110. He has rebounded with the bat in 2024, with his expected WOBA in the top 2% once again, and his OPS plus climbing back north of 130. He still has one of the best arms in right field in the game, though his glove has taken a small step back, with his outs above average total currently sitting at -1, slightly below average. Still, just 25, he should continue to learn and grow from his mistakes, which could help him climb back into the MVP territory he once seemed destined to dwell in for much of the next decade. Regardless, Chi Sox fans won't soon forget how their squad traded a player with as much magnetism as Tatis for essentially a 3-year run of modern-day Patrick Corbin levels of production. When the Nationals traded Juan Soto to the Padres in 2022, they got back an impressive haul of pieces that could one day lead to a championship: CJ Abrams, Mackenzie Gore, and James Wood. In 2021, the Rockies had tried to pull off a similar blockbuster trade involving their superstar, Nolan Arenado. The move, however, had a weird vibe from the outset, as it literally baffled everyone that came into knowledge of it. Ominous even was this tweet that his former team posted the day of the trade. You see, Arenado had signed a 7-year, $260 million extension in 2019, so he could spend the rest of his prime with the Rocks. Just 2 years later, Colorado was shipping him off to St. Louis, along with $50 million, for one back-end starter, Austin Gomber, and 4 unproven prospects. Why, exactly? Because the team had insisted that Arenado's contract had an opt-out clause after 2022. He wanted to be traded, the team said. He pushed for this, the team claimed. Maybe so, but even if he did, it seemed more than likely to be the result of a years-long failure to engender any hope in their future that led him to wanting to bail more than any kind of overnight change of heart. There were insiders that doubted this narrative completely, however, instead insisting the Rocks just wanted to cut salary. Needless to say, the trade has been a complete disaster for the Rockies. Arenado has put up a WAR of 14.7, made the All-Star team every year from 2021 to 2023, won 2 Gold Gloves, and in 2022 finished 3rd in NL MVP voting. He slumped this year, surely, with his average exit velocity in the bottom 5%, but his OPS plus still has him close to an average MLB player. He's in decline, but he's still a valuable veteran presence on a club that's in the hunt for a playoff spot. Of the 5 total players the Rockies got for Arenado, Gomber's the only one with a positive WAR at 4.3. Pitching in Colorado ain't easy, but he's done his best, carrying with him a record of 24-30 since his arrival, with an ERA of 5.32 and an ERA plus of 93. Those are 5th starter numbers though, at best, the kind of guy smart teams grab once they get released. The Jordan Lyles of the world, they are generally considered the centerpiece of a major trade. Of the rest, Montero currently has a negative 1.4 WAR in 2024, batting just over 200 with no pop while fanning in 1 of 3 ABs. The rest of the prospects, being Summers, Losi, and Gill, will probably never appear at a major league game unless they decide to buy a ticket. So, the Cardinals got Nolan Arenado and $50 million, didn't have to give up Mason Wynn or Nolan Gorman, and got in return a perennial All-Star with a Hall of Fame plaque potentially in his future. The Rockies got a 5th starter, one of the worst everyday players in baseball, and a crop of minor league filler. Talk about a lopsided deal. It's not often that the number 1 overall pick of the draft gets traded before he even debuts for the team that picked him, but that's exactly what happened to the 1-1 pick of 2015, Dansby Swanson, who was taken by the D-backs. 6 months later, Swanson was traded to the Braves, along with Ender Inciarte and Aaron Blair, for pitchers Shelby Miller and Gabe Spear. In the annals of MLB, the 1-1 pick is tricky. Sometimes you get Ken Griffey Jr., and sometimes you get Matt Bush or Tim Beckham. It was as if the D-backs suffered from some kind of post-draft haze that caused them to immediately regret their pick. Indeed, they could have selected Alex Bregman, who went 2nd overall, or Kyle Tucker, who went 5th. And if they wanted pitching, Walker Buehler was available. But it wasn't like Swanson showed no promise. The D-backs signed him and sent him to low A before watching him hit .289 with his advanced defense. He projected to be a solid hitting everyday MLB shortstop with Gold Glove upside, who needed only a little seasoning, a valuable commodity as far as big leaguers go. In 2014, Miller, meanwhile, had gone 10-9 with the Cardinals with an ERA of 3.74. His FIP was 4.54, so there were definitely some red flags as far as his stuff. He didn't give up many hits, and he didn't strike out many batters. It was enough, however, for the Braves to trade Jason Hayward to the Cards for him, and he proved this move advantageous immediately, throwing up an ERA of 3.04 in his first year in Atlanta. His FIP was again higher than this at 3.45, but it was a step forward, no doubt. Miller was set to be a solid 2-3 starter in Atlanta for years to come. The D-backs, however, swooped in and traded for him at a value that was as if they were getting a top-line guy. Not only did they gift the Braves a shortstop who'd go on to finish top 20 in MVP voting twice, win a Gold Glove, register nearly 15 WAR in his time in Atlanta, and anchor a World Series champion in 2021, they also threw in Inciarte, who'd win 3 straight Gold Gloves in center while tallying 6.3 WAR of his own along the way. Neither Blair nor Spear ever really amounted to anything, so the trade boiled down to Swanson and Inciarte for Miller. With the D-backs, Miller was outright putrid. He went 5-18 with an ERA of 6.35 over his 3 years in the desert, with his ERA plus coming in at 71, one of the worst totals in baseball over this period. Since 2018, he's bounced around his 6 separate teams while being converted to a reliever. His 2024 totals have him at a 6.23 ERA and 68 ERA plus for Detroit. In 2016, the Miami Marlins were one of the most exciting young teams in recent history. In the outfield, Giancarlo Stanton, Marcell Ozuna, and Christian Yelich, all 26 years old or younger. Their best pitcher might have become one of the greatest ever, a 23-year-old Jose Fernandez. Their catcher was generational talent JT Realmuto, age 25. Every game was must-watch, even if the team wouldn't go on to make the playoffs. Then, tragically, as if in a second, it was gone. Fernandez died in a boating accident, taking away the emerging face of their team. Then, after a disastrous follow-up season in 2017, NL MVP Stanton was traded to the Yankees. 2 days later, Ozuna was traded to the Cardinals. That is how low-budget teams operate. You trade stars away before they hit free agency for young talent, or if you ink a deal, you end up going queasy on. Both deals have gone on to age in interesting ways, with the highlight being Sandy Alcantara, who they got from Marcell, winning a Cy Young. However, it was just 2 months after the Ozuna move that the Marlins traded their last major outfield piece, Yelich, to the Brewers for 4 prospects: Lewis Brinson, Monty Harrison, Isan Diaz, and Jordan Yamamoto. Yelich was a 5-tool athlete who'd shown flashes of greatness. He'd hit .290 with the Marlins, displaying decent speed, excellent defense, and the occasional burst of power, an intriguing package. The cornerstone of the return was Lewis Brinson, who, at 23, was the Brewers' top prospect. The deal went south for the Marlins very quickly. In 2018, Yelich broke out in a big way, winning the NL MVP with a year for the ages, leading the NL in average, slugging, OPS, and OPS+. He matched 36 homers along the way and drove in 110 runs. And he was one of the best base runners in the game to top it all off. Then, somehow, he was even better in 2019, with an OPS plus of 179 that was the best in all of baseball, with him only missing out on a second consecutive MVP trophy in large part due to a late season knee injury. Since that year he's had his ups and downs, but as of lately, he's rebounded in a big way, as midway through 2024 he's put up a WAR of 2.1, a 329 average, 903 OPS, and 154 OPS+. Brinson, meanwhile, struggled mightily from the get-go, never managing to crack even a 650 OPS in a season, with his eventual career WAR total coming out to negative 3.6. He's not even with the team anymore at this point. Harrison, Diaz, and Yamamoto never made it to the show in any meaningful way, and have all since retired from professional baseball, with Monty taking the most eclectic path of the three by, at age 28, joining Arkansas at the D1 level as a football player. So, to recap, the Brewers got an MVP winner and the face of their franchise for years to come and gave up, what, 4 complete busts? Crazy. Why does anyone trade with the Rays? Jake Bauers for Yandy Diaz, who won a batting title. Matthew Liberatore for Randy Rosarena, who, despite a poor 2024, is still probably the face of their franchise at this point and has had dominant years in the past. Seth Johnson for Jose Siri, one of the most athletic players in the MLB who's shown flashes this season. Tobias Myers for Junior Caminero, a top prospect. The list is long, and that's just the recent deals. But perhaps the mother of all trade swindles that the Rays executed was the one perpetrated in July 2018, when the Rays were playing well but were likely not going to make the postseason, despite eventually winning 90 games. So, like David Price before him, East Chris Archer got shipped off for 2 former top prospects. Archer was the spiritual leader of the Rays before the deal, showing constant energy and a willingness to lead. In 2015, he had struck out 257 batters in 212 innings. His slider was still among the best in the game. To top it all off, he was durable, starting over 30 games for 4 straight seasons. At this point in the season, the Pirates were contending, despite having moved Garrett Cole and Andrew McCutchen. They were 3.5 games out of a wildcard spot on July 31st when they pulled the trigger to land Chris. But to get him, the Pirates had to give up Austin Meadows, a former first-rounder with lots of upside to his game as a corner outfielder, and Tyler Glasnow, a 6'8" flamethrower who had mostly struggled in the bigs. The Pirates finished the deal off by throwing in another first-rounder, Shane Baz, who then was in rookie ball. Suffice it to say, the deal ended up being an absolute rout. Meadows would go on to lead the Rays into the playoffs in 2019 when he cranked out an OPS plus of 144 with 33 dingers. He would also have a solid 2021, knocking in 106 runs with 27 round trippers, but it was Glasnow that blossomed into one of the most feared pitchers in the game. While he dealt with injury issue year after year, he still managed to toss 388 innings for Tampa with an ERA of 3.20, an ERA plus of 1.30, and a K/9 of 12.2. Following the 23 season, the Rays then turned around and shipped him off to the Dodgers for 2 young intriguing pieces in Ryan Pepio and Johnny DeLuca. Baz dominated AAA in 2021, striking out 113 in 78 innings before getting called up to make his MLB debut. Elbow problems have since cost him most of 2022 and all of 2023, though he is in line to rejoin the rotation sometime in 2024, and still is just 25 years old. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh never managed to make the postseason with Archer, who, with the Bucks, went 4-12 with an ERA of 4.92. The irony is that after the Pirates released Archer in 2021, he re-signed with the Rays, adding insult to an already fairly substantial injury. The gift keeps on giving to this day. You see, Austin Meadows was traded for Isaac Paredes, who's managed a 128 OPS plus with Tampa and currently ranks as one of the season's most intriguing pieces of trade bait, potentially netting the Rays even more prospect fodder 6 years after their initial deal with Archer. As long as MLB teams make trades, bad deals will happen. Injuries, age-related degradation, even the occasional rule change can bring even the most promising stretches to a grinding halt, transforming the landscape of any exchange in a millisecond. However, this doesn't change how the legacies of their host teams' front offices live on, with the glare of the camera lens focused heavily on what could have been, had we just had the benefit of foresight. Or, in some cases, the common sense of a house cat. I'll see you back here in a couple of years, with another batch of the worst trades having taken place since this vid. Who will it involve? What will be their impact? I guess only time can tell. Now, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, consider liking and subscribing and checking out the other videos in this playlist. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.